Coming up, a crossover episode of Locked On Heat and Locked On Celtics. We discuss everything both sides are saying about the Heat-Celtics series and break down how the Heat can bounce back and get a win in Game 4. Does Locked On Celtics host John Karalis think the Heat can tie the series? Or does he think it's all over? All of that and much more coming up next.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In this game of make it and take it, since the Celtics won, I'll be running point for this one. So it's just me and you, Wes. How are you feeling after Game 3?
Yeah, I'm feeling like this is more of what I thought the series was going to look like after Game 3. You just looked at a healthy Celtics team that stacked up a bunch of wins during the regular season, the dominance that they were able to put on display throughout the regular season versus a Heat team sort of limping into the playoffs without two key rotation players. Obviously, their best player, that Jimmy Butler. Game 2 was an anomaly for a few different reasons, just because and the biggest one obviously being like 54% shooting from three-point range from Miami, and then getting that win on the road in Game 2 to come back with the split. But this one felt closer to Game 1. The Heat were not able to get up the shots that they wanted to get up from three-point range. They ended up not even taking 40, which is sort of like the watermark number. They didn't even get close to it. The Celtics were just defensively smothering them. And I think that's when the Celtics defense is engaged. And obviously Joe Mazzulla made some adjustments going from Game 2 to Game 3. The closeouts were a lot harder. They really put an emphasis on that and stuff like that. But that's what the Celtics defense should look like, and it's what I expected it to look like. And that was the other part of the anomaly, is like the Celtics defense in Game 2 was not the defense that we've seen for the last 5 months. And so, yeah, I guess this is more what I thought this series was going to look like. But that said, there's a lot that the Heat could improve on from Game 3 that I'm sure we'll get to.
Yeah, and it's, I think my biggest takeaway here for the Celtics is the Game 2, Game 3 difference. It's, it's all on them. It's all in their heads. It's all on them to do what they do best, right? We talk about adjustments, and the adjustment, Joe Mazzulla said it after the game. We played harder. We played with more physicality. It's, no offense to the Miami Heat, but they're not in a position where the Celtics need to be saying, okay, we're going to throw some zone in there. We're going to mix things up. We're going to mix up the matchups to throw Jason Tatum on somebody so he can help off it and blah, 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 blah. That's not where the Celtics are against an undermanned Heat team. So it's about, if the Celtics play the way they're supposed to play and the way they're capable of playing, they should handle this easy. It's a 1-8 matchup against a team that is just devastated by injuries and has played a certain way all year, and it's hard for them to do that all the time. And the thing about Game 2 that bugged me so much was that the Celtics were daring Miami. Like, go ahead, you got that shot, go ahead, take it. And they were like, great, cool, I get to sit there, I get to feel comfortable.
Right.
And that's disrespectful. That is, like, I can be brash and talk my trash here on this show and piss off Miami Heat fans, but it never comes from a disrespectful place. It comes from I think my team is better place. And I think when you say, no, I'm not even going to close out on you,
right,
that's a level of disrespect that it's a mental lapse that I hated. And and the worst part, Wes, is I can't rule out that won't happen again. I can't say that they won't have, we've been talking about, like, I don't want to come back here. I do not want to come back here. I love Miami. I love coming down for, we're having a great time with my wife. I don't want to have to come back here until next year. So don't do this thing again.
Yeah.
Boston.
And that's sort of what it is, right? I mean, you mentioned the physicality part of it, and that was the conversation from the Celtics after Game 2. We got to be more physical. We kind of have to match that energy. And then what happens? The Heat lose Game 3 to a much more physical Boston Celtics team. And the talk out of the Heat's camp now is, we got to ramp it up. We got to be more physical. We got to bring the energy. And you know this, John, like, this was basically the conversation from both teams in the Eastern Conference Finals last year, when the Heat went up 3-0, and then the Celtics come back from the 3-0 series, and they win 3 games in a row. And it was sort of the same thing. It was like, coaches are going to say coach things. We know, like, coach speak is just sort of coach speak. But I think there is something to be said of, for like, okay, we need to set better screens. We got to rebound better. We got to force the ball out of their hands. Like that's when I hear we got to be more physical. Those are the sort of things that I'm imagining that the coaches are really talking about there. And I was surprised the same way that you were surprised. The Celtics should not be daring the Heat shooters to do anything because the last thing that they need is for them to get confident. The last thing that they need is for the Heat and those role players to kind of find a rhythm that wasn't there throughout the play-in tournament and the way that they sort of just stumbled into the playoffs with all the injuries and everything that they're dealing with. Like the last thing you wanted to do was give them some reason to believe. And it just felt like the Celtics opened that door. And there was a lot of confidence coming out of the Heat going into game 3. Like it felt like I kept telling people like the players feel really good about the game plan. And they feel really good about where Eric Spoelstra is in this matchup, in the coaching matchup in particular. And I think they felt good about, hey, we just made half of our 3-pointers in Boston, and we have this thing split coming back home for 2 games. But the Celtics did what they had to do, and they flipped momentum. And now it's sort of back on Miami. You know, they're the ones against the ropes to kind of try to flip it back their way.
Let me ask you this. Beginning of the first quarter, did you feel like that was Celtics defense, or you think that was make miss?
It's a good question. Both. I thought the Heat got in over a little over their skis a little bit with they kind of made some pre-adjustments. They made some proactive adjustments. They knew that they were after game 2 where it was basically Tyler Hero running pick and roll with Bam Adebayo, and that was like the crux of the entire offense. They knew that they were going to try to get the ball out of Tyler Hero's hands, and so they just took it out of Tyler Hero's hands. First play of the game, Tyler Hero just tosses it to Caleb Martin. Hey, you initiate the offense. Second Heat possession of the game. Same thing. Hero just tossed it to Jaime Jaquez Jr. You're going to initiate the offense. And I thought it was interesting to like, okay, well, we're not going to let Boston get in front of us here. We're not going to let Boston take the ball out of Tyler's hands. Instead, we're going to just run him off ball and have him do like a Klay Thompson, Duncan Robinson impression, and we're going to get him the ball that way. But I thought by doing that, it took the Heat out of the rhythm that they sort of established with that pick and roll, sort of spamming the pick and roll button, and they found a rhythm with that in game 2. And I thought it took them out of their rhythm a little bit. As good as Caleb Martin and Jaime Jaquez could be, they're not initiators in a playoff series against the second best defense in the NBA. You know what I mean? So I thought that flattened them out. I thought Boston's defense, and then throughout the game, even beyond the first quarter, John, like I just thought when they were switching everything, when they finally were Xing out on their shooters, when they were doing all the things that you expect a high level defense to do, it just completely flattened out Miami's offense. They never found a rhythm. So I think it was a little bit of both.
Yeah, I think for Boston, it's just about not letting Miami get the volume. It's just get them. It doesn't matter how many 2-pointers Miami takes. And just and if Bam Adebayo wants to take every shot, go for it. Like Bam mid-range shots, and he's not bad at them, but he's not Kevin Durant at them.
Right.
And that's there's a level of efficiency that he's not quite at. Look, he's at some games. He was at it in game 2, and hitting Boston with the barrage of threes and closing them out with, Bam, just ISO.
That's when you do it, right? That's when you do it. You do it at the end of the game in the last 5 minutes in crunch time. You can't have Bam mid-range you to death for an entire game like it's the 90s, right? This is not Michael Jordan's NBA anymore. Like this doesn't work. You need to be able to catch up. I thought the Heat have actually done a pretty good job defending the Celtics in this series. What their problem is scoring with the Celtics. The only way to do that, like if you could keep Boston to 100 to 110 points, which have basically been the case this series, that's a win defensively. That's right where you kind of want to be. It's just a matter of, hey, how can we score 115 points? How can we hang 115 points against the Celtics? They had 39 points in the first half, John, in game 3.
Yeah.
Like, that's just not going to cut it. I don't care how good your second half is going to be. Like, that, your game's basically over at that point.
Yeah. My favorite stat from the game was if you just dropped Boston's first quarter points to 0, they still would have had a 3-point lead at halftime because of that second quarter.
It's atrocious.
And the way they defended So how can we're going to pay off on the question here on the YouTube graphic? How can the Heat bounce back? How can they put up? Is there a way for them to get back to the game 2 stuff and figure out, like, can they get back to putting up the volume that they need to hang with the Celtics? We'll do that in just a minute.
Today's episode of a crossover episode of Locked On Heat and Locked On Celtics is brought to you by our friends at Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Our friends at Nissan have the lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. Let's start with the 2024 Nissan Rogue. It's the perfect car for city drives and great escapes. Class exclusive Google built-in is your always updating assistant to call on almost anything. Gone are the days of connecting your phone. Google Assistant, Google Maps, and Google Play Store are built right into the 12.3-inch HD touchscreen infotainment system, and the 2024 Rogue is the perfect midsize crossover for your next adventure. Let's also talk about the 2024 Nissan Armada. It's going to change the way it's going to change what you expect from a full-size SUV. Picture a rugged 4x4 that could seat up to 8 in first-class luxury and style, tow bigger, and explore further in the 2024 Armada. Take the Nissan Rogue, the Nissan Pathfinder, or the Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by Monopoly Go. I've been told I'm a competitive person. John, do you think that's true?
I think we both are. I think that comes through and what our fans think of one another.
Okay, well, yeah, I do definitely have a competitive side. We all do. You do. My competitive side is a big fan of Monopoly Go. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's been downloaded over 150 million times. It's a great twist on Monopoly, where you play on not one, but hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations, building up amazing cities that bring you big money. The best part is just messing with your friends. I can charge them rent on my iconic properties, just like classic Monopoly, but now I can also heist their vaults of riches for myself. And the leaderboards show me who the biggest Monopoly tycoon is. But it's not just my competitive side that loves it. You can team up with friends and people all around the world in timed tournaments to earn huge rewards. So get in the game and join your friends. Download Monopoly Go now for free on the App Store or Google Play.
Thanks for making Locked On Celtics and Locked On Heat your first listen. Go check out Locked On Sports Today, streaming 24/7 on YouTube, also on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. It's real sports talk, real conversation like this. Two vicious adversaries just having a conversation and not fake arguing like you find on all those other sports. So find it 24/7 on YouTube and on Amazon Fire. All right, so the formula is there. I don't know what else Miami can do, right? I don't know if there's another way for them to win because the offense isn't there if they don't take a certain amount of threes.
It's just
so how do they do it?
Take more threes. Just take them. I mean, there was a point in that game, in game 3, where I was like, just pull up from the logo. They're not defending you out there. Just you got to get them. But the point being is you got to get them up. You just got to get them up. To your point earlier, the mid-range stuff is not going to work. Having Porzingis drop by the rim, the Heat, their rim shooting percentage was not good and has not been very good all season. But they only got 8 or 9 attempts at the rim the entire game, and Boston got 10 more than them in that game. So just beyond the three-point shooting, you're not getting that stuff at the rim. Boston is taking that away with their size, and there's not really anything the Heat can do because without Jimmy and without Terry Rozier, they're not a good team at getting to the rim. So, all right, well, just take that off the board because it's off the board. Then you got to get back to that to at least 43 pointers a game. They took less than 30 in game 3. And again, that was the weirdest part to me is because the thing that stuck out to me in game 1 was how hesitant they were to take those 3-pointers because that's not really it's not their behavior, right? They need to kind of be this high volume 3-point shooting team, and that's not what they've been all season. And so it's a lot to ask. It feels like it's really easy for us to just get on a podcast and say, "We'll take more threes," but it's a lot to ask a player who has basically built habits at least for a season, if not for multiple seasons, of I'm going to drive these closeouts. I'm going to eat up space. I'm going to be physical. I'm going to get to the basket. I'm going to do all the things that the Miami Heat do. That's how they run their offense. And instead of doing all of that, I'm going to take a semi-contested 3-pointer, right? And it's a lot to ask several players on a roster to change their behavior in that way. And that's what was so crazy to me in game 2 was I never thought I could see that from Miami Heat team cosplaying as the 2018 Houston Rockets. I never thought I would see that. It's just so much. You never see it. And they did it. And so maybe I should be less surprised that they didn't do it in game 3, but I was still surprised because I just saw it in game 2. So can they get back to it in game 4? They took 23 wide open jumpers in game 3. or in game 2. They took 13 wide open jumpers in game 3. That's a testament to Boston closing out and being better on that. But there was also some that I thought I counted like half a dozen where they should have just shot the ball. Just shoot the ball. And you can't live in a world where you go from good shot to great shot because that doesn't exist. Not in this matchup. It's good shot to worst shot now. Like there's not going to you can't assume they're going to be great shots. And if you get a wide open one, great. But you're not going to win a game on even 13 or even 23 wide open shots. You got to and you got to take some of the harder ones, some of the more contested ones, and just not be afraid and try to establish a rhythm that way. So all of that is to say, put them up, man. Just put them up. Just put up the threes. Like I call it Cinderella ball, and it's like what a team a lower seeded team going up against a blue chip has to do in the NCAA tournament. Just get them up and and hope it works out.
It's funny because everything that you've said and how it showed up, like I said this stuff heading into game 2 when I was previewing it on my own, and it ends up like I was right about the phenomenon, but wrong about how it showed up because I thought it would show up in game 2 where you would rely on these old habits. That 85 games of habits would tell you that under some duress, you go back to what you do. The problem was that Boston never put them under any duress. So it's very easy to take 40 plus 3-pointers when the other team's going like, yeah, you won't make that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you find those opportunities to be like, oh, okay, I'll take this because you're not closing out on me. And to your point, where those habits come in is when the guy's closing out, when that you see that green blob, whoever it might be, coming your way, like
you're trained to attack that closeout. Like it's a habit. It's muscle memory.
That's it. Yeah, I go back to this. I don't know if I've used this on the podcast before, but I always go back to this one thing I remember seeing years and years ago on like MLB TV. They had a shortstop and a second baseman. Don't even remember who, and it doesn't matter. They were demonstrating the how to turn a double play, just like anything on a network TV thing. And they just showed it, and he flipped the imaginary ball to the shortstop, and the shortstop hopped as if a guy was coming in to take him out, sliding in. And he's like, I didn't mean to, like, it was just a force of habit that when you get it and you throw, you hop because that guy's trying to take you out. The muscle memory is there. And since I saw that, I'm like, man, it is hard to shake the things that your body has subconsciously learned.
Right.
And so when Boston isn't defending hard, then it's very easy to be like, oh, I will take this shot.
Right.
When they are actually up at the point of attack, at the level of the screen, getting the ball out of that guy's hands, and when it's a kick, there's an aggressive closeout, and they see a Celtic coming, there's no inclination to take that contested, semi-contested shot. They will take all the somewhat open shots, mostly open shots, but if there's any sort of hand in their face or body flying at them, they're just gonna deck it and drive, and that is the absolute number one key to this series for Boston. You've got to aggressively close out, and it keeps the streaky shooters out of rhythm, right? Like Caleb Martin is shooting 36% on the year. It's because he has a 5 of 6 night and then a couple of 1 of 6 nights string together, and it all works out to be 30-something. If you let him get hot, he'll make them. We've seen it. So don't let him get comfortable, and things will work out. I know I get into trouble when I say definitive things like this, but I don't think I'm speaking out of turn. There's no way Miami can win in a mid-range battle.
No, there's not.
The
math
beat the
doesn't add up.
Celtics that way.
The math doesn't add up. And Eric Spoelstra has been very blunt about this, right? He has literally said, we know the math problem in this series. And they said that going in game 2, and they shot more than 43 pointers in that game. Like, that's just okay. That's the math that you kind of have to get to. There's like, when we say that there's a formula in this series, there's almost literally a formula, like a math formula that the Heat have to put together. Like there is an X and a Y equals Z. Like there just is that in this series. The thing with and you mentioned Caleb Martin, and that's a good one. He was talking after practice today about, he looked at the film. There was like, he needs to be more aggressive at doing literally having the conversation we just had of, I usually want to drive and attack and kick out and do that. So I can't. I have to just let it go. And Jaime Jaquez Jr., same thing. I got to just let it go. Like these guys are saying it, like I got to let it go. And it's almost like that's the self-talk that you have to have. So when we talk about breaking habits, and the point you make, John, is such a good one about being under duress and kind of falling back in your comfort zone. And for Miami, their comfort zone is just hurtling into bodies, right? Like that's their comfort zone, is just being bowling balls and going into the pins. And it can't be that. Their comfort zone has to almost turn into, all right, I'm just going to take the shot early in the shot clock. I know there's still 17 seconds on the shot clock, but we don't have to wait until the last 5 seconds of every shot clock to take our shot here. So, and part of the way you do that is the film. That's how you do it in a 7-game series. You look at the film, you look at the shots that you didn't take, you look at the Celtics now not giving them open, but when they're chasing over those screens and they're aggressively closing out, that is going to open up other things. Like that's just how basketball works. Like there will be other little soft pressure points where the Heat are going to be able to poke at it, and it's up to them. So when we're talking about other adjustments, it's not just letting it fly, but it's also, okay, if they're going to close out hard on us, then what does that open up for us backdoor? What can we exploit there to kind of make Boston's defense react in a way that they didn't have to respond in game 3? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Let's flip it. Let's go to Boston's offense versus Miami's defense. I'll tell you the one thing that I loved that Boston did, and it's not shooting 3-pointers. The one thing that I loved, and let's see what you think about how Miami stops it.
Today's episode of Locked On Heat and Locked On Celtics is brought to you by DoorDash. You want to make your mom smile? Start Mother's Day with flowers or surprise her with gifts from the brands that she loves, delivered the same day with DoorDash. Does mom have a sweet tooth? Is she a tech enthusiast, a beauty connoisseur, or is she an outdoorsy person? No matter what she's into, you can make her smile with a fruit or flower bouquet, makeup, tech gear, workout wear, and more. Pair flowers with a gift card so she can celebrate the way that she wants. Is she a bookworm? Try a bookstore gift card. Does she like a good latte? Get her a gift card to her favorite cafe. You can't go wrong. Get all your Mother's Day gifts all in one place and get 50% off your next order, up to $15 when you spend $15 on your next flower, convenience, grocery, or retail order now with the code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA. Order using DoorDash today. Terms apply.
So I loved when the Celtics attacked quickly. The thing I loved most about game 3 was highlighted by 2 plays. Jaylen Brown, both of them on the left side, one in each half, where he gets the ball, he sees Tyler Hero in front of him, and it's no wait. It's no, okay, you go that way. Nope, I don't want the pick. You go this way. Direct. Okay, now Tyler Hero, it's me and you. Like it's like almost like this big dramatic, I am about to take this man off the dribble, and that not gonna work. It's when he attacked that, and there was one in the second half, same idea, spin move past Jaquez couldn't help, and a lay-in on the other side. I looked at that and I was like, yes, thank you. That is how you attack the mismatches. And there are mismatches all over the floor for Boston, right? Jason and Jaylen both are going to have them. And the Celtics offense creates off of that. They draw the defense and kick. And that's how Porzingis gets going early and Derek White gets going. Though the 2 biggest keys were Porzingis getting going in the first quarter, Derek White's kick to close the second quarter, but all of that played off of the other guys. And if it's almost like the defensive version of what we were talking about with Miami, where in game 2, they didn't help on Tatum and Brown because I think because the Celtics were going so slow, they didn't force Miami into that knee-jerk habit. Just like when you're running at them off the line, you're like, oh, gotta drive. When you're in transition, so it starts with getting the stop on the other end, and you're running and you're cross match and you're a member of the Heat that's not Tyler Hero, let's say, and you look over and Jaylen Brown's already crossing him over, your instinct is to help.
Right.
And when that is your instinct and you do it, you've kind of broken ranks, and now those guys can kick it to whoever that guy was that left, and that guy gets to make the play, and now Miami's in rotation. Miami was never in rotation in game 2. It felt like they were in rotation a lot in game 3, and now the other guys get going. So not only is it easy buckets for Jaylen and Jason, it's getting these other guys the shots that they need to make Miami kind of fear everybody on the floor. So if the Celtics are attacking quickly, then it's the flip side of Miami's got nothing, because I don't know how Miami stops that.
Yeah, the big part, too, is limiting the turnovers when Miami's on offense, because a lot of those scramble situations were happening in full court and open floor and all that stuff. When the Heat have a chance to set their defense, I actually really like the way that they've been able to defend this team.
Yeah.
You mentioned the Tyler Hero, Jaylen Brown matchup. That, to me, has been so fascinating in this series. It's just literally being like, you know what? We're just going to put Tyler Hero on Jaylen Brown, and we're just going to live with it. And if Jaylen Brown takes him off the dribble a few times, that's going to be okay. We're just going to live with that. And I thought it actually was a pretty genius thing, and I'm curious what you think about this, John, because what we all recognize the Tyler Hero's deficiencies on that end. The problem with him is when teams are able to get their best player switched on to Tyler Hero. And then it does sort of turn into like, okay, now we're kind of got to get into rotation and try to cover up for him and all these things. Instead of doing that, instead of having Tyler Hero even guard like Derek White or Drew Holiday, knowing that they're going to set a screen for Jason Tatum, and then you've got Tatum on Tyler Hero, and now everybody else has to react to that on Miami's defense. Instead, they're saying, you know what, we're just going to do this for you. We're going to put Tyler Hero on Jaylen Brown, knowing that Celtics don't really want to run their offense through Jaylen Brown. They want to run it to Jaylen Brown. You know what I mean? Like, they want to get it to him on the second side and let him go and let him eat. And if they just say, you know what, we're just going to put Tyler Hero over here on an island, now we could just let our 4 defenders guard these other 4 offensive players. And then when they eventually do swing it to Jaylen Brown, we're just going to sort of live with that result. And we're going to, and just understanding we'd rather have that than have to basically make up for Tyler Hero's deficiencies over here on the floor.
Yeah, I think, and that's like a sound strategy. But what the Celtics did a little bit and should do more of is then you just start using Jaylen as a screener, and you say, okay, we're daring you to run our offense, your offense through Jaylen Brown. And the Celtics say, no, we're still not going to do that, even though that's the matchup. We sometimes, yes. So when you get the ball and you're on the move, right? Transition or at least running the ball, pushing the tempo a little bit and not letting Miami get fully set, then yeah, go ahead, Jaylen, attack downhill. That's really your strength. But what the Celtics didn't do a ton of, and I think they did it more in game 2, they didn't do a ton of just the spread. Oh, we're given this matchup of Tyler Hero. Well, we're just going to accept the matchup where it is. What they did in game 3 was they still dictated where the matchup was going to be. So you can start them on Jaylen Brown, but you could do some off-ball action to get him, which they did. They run a lot of like a horn set where Porzingis and they have so many different variations of the horn set where you put Jaylen and Porzingis at the 2 elbows with Jason Tatum and at the top of the key, and Jaylen screens for Porzingis, and Porzingis now gets Hero on him. Or Jaylen comes up and screens the ball, and Jason's now facing Hero. And so you can still...
And they did that a few times in game 3.
Yeah.
They ended up getting Hero switched on to Tatum quite a bit.
So you can still hunt the mismatch,
yeah.
Even though you've got a mismatch. And this was like my big message after game 2 was just because you have the mismatch doesn't mean you always have to take that one.
Right.
You can still work your offense, because you still have an opportunity to make Miami move. You still got to make them move. You still got to see if you can put them in rotation. And if you willingly take Porzingis and White and Holiday's a different story right now, but offensively, But if you willingly take those guys out of the equation, now you're playing into what Miami wants to do.
Exactly.
So,
Are you surprised by how it's not been an awesome Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown series? Are you surprised by that?
No, I'm not surprised. I think the strength of the Celtics this season has been that those guys have taken just like a half step back in how much they are looking for their own offense and moving the ball. Like they find their spots and they get to their scoring averages are down, and their usage rates are down. But the strength of what the Celtics are offensively and why they've put up these historic numbers is because you've got Porzingis and White and Holiday and Horford and Hauser. All of them are getting their touches, and the power of those guys being threats is what opens up the opportunities for Tatum and Brown when it matters, and they have to take advantage of it then. So I'm not surprised that it's not one of those two guys or both of those guys having monster series. And I was never looking forward to that. I guess
I was most surprised by like in game, because I hear everything you're saying is absolutely true. But in game 2, like their scoring numbers were up, but their assists were down. You know what I mean? And so and that was the weird part is, I don't know. I still feel like they're going to need a big game from Jason Tatum. Like all the things, it feels like there's going to be a point where they just need Tatum to score 40. And I don't know. It'll be really interesting. My biggest takeaway from this is like the Heat have real things that they're trying to overcome just on their own end in terms of the injuries and all these things. Like they are outmatched in this series. And I've made my prediction I think the Heat are going to lose this series. But what is interesting to me is sort of what other teams can learn about how to defend the Celtics. And I won't go so far as to say like the Heat put out the blueprint, because that feels like pretty extreme, but they provided some ideas that teams that are fully stocked and have the personnel that you might need could use. Like they could borrow and steal from Eric Spoelstra's game plan here. And I'm going to be really interested to see how the Celtics are able to respond to that going forward, if and when they do win this series. So.
Yeah, look, I personally, I don't want to see a series where it's just Jason Tatum against the world, like he's Luka Doncic or somebody, you know, and like that's not the strength of the Celtics is power in numbers, and their talent, their the depth of their talent at the top of the roster, because we've seen that in spurts, any one of those guys can all of a sudden dominate a stretch of the game, and you don't need Tatum should be there when you need him. Mm-hmm. He shouldn't be there the whole game as the only primary threat. He should be the best player on the floor, but not the ball hog. So
right.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes moving forward.
Give me one non-win-loss prediction for Game 4.
I'm gonna say Sam Hauser has like a 20-point game.
Okay.
It's gonna be like a weird like.
Is there 80 grand on the over anywhere?
Yeah, I'm not Jonte Porter over here, so let's.
I was gonna go something similar. I'm gonna go Caleb Martin makes 5 3-pointers again. I like that number for him.
Yeah, I mean, if Caleb Martin hits 5 3-pointers, it could be, we both could be right, because it could be like Caleb Martin got 5 3-pointers again, but here comes Sam Hauser hitting 6 to negate it. So
right. No, that'll be great. That'll be the Game 4 everybody was waiting to see, was the Caleb Martin versus Sam Hauser showdown. So that'll be fun.
Look, we'll hopefully we get something to talk about.
Yeah.
Because right now this is kind of like the same old stuff. But hey, look, thank you all for listening to both of these. Make sure you're subscribed to both podcasts. Listen to both podcasts. Listen to a podcast if you want. Whatever. We'd love to have you. Get into each other's comment section. Get into that YouTube comment section. I see you, Miami Heat fans, in the Locked On Celtics chat. No matter what it is, even a loss, my Heat fans are like, oh, congratulations, big whoop, you like there. But hop into the comment section and let us know what you think. As always, it's been a great time here talking basketball with us.
Good times, John.